Right friends, welcome back to revision module. This is the 10th module and 11th module. We are concentrating on science and technology, and for the next 25 to 30 minutes, let us look at some science and technology events. And before going ahead, let me take you to the Chang'e 4 mission of China, then InSight, then the next one is New Horizons spacecraft and Ultima Thule. So after completing these things, then we will go to one important aspect of replace campaign of WHO, trans fats, at the same time total polar compounds. These are the aspects which we are going to deliberate in this module. These are very important from your examination perspective. Let us look at the Chang'e 4 mission of China. 3-4 important points are there in this Chang'e 4 mission. This is of China. This is a robotic spacecraft Chang'e 4 that successfully landed on the far side of the moon, or you can say other side of the moon. And what is far side, what is near side, and what is tidal locking? These points we are going to deliberate. And one important aspect which comes to my mind is it landed on the other side of the moon, or you can say far side of the moon. And what about communication? There must be some relay communication satellite, and for that purpose they launched this Queqiao. This Queqiao is the satellite, or you can say this is a communication satellite for the spacecraft, or you can say for the robotic spacecraft Chang'e 4, which landed on the other side of the moon. Right, so the spacecraft is named after Chinese moon goddess. This is one part, and the second part is it landed on the Van Karman crater, and this particular point was untouched by earlier missions from Earth. Right, so Queqiao, this is the communication relay satellite, please don't forget, and this mission could pave way for setting up of radio telescope on the far side of the moon, or you can say it is a good location for radio astronomy because of free of the disturbances. Right friends, before understanding this, what is the far side of the moon? Or you can say this situation arose because of tidal locking. What is the meaning of tidal locking? Tidal locking is the name given to the situation when an object's orbital period is equal to the rotational period. And when you look at moon, it is 28 days. That means here the period of rotation is same as the time it takes to make one orbit around the earth. Please don't forget, moon, this is revolving around earth, all of you are familiar, and here the important aspect is period of rotation is the same as the time it takes to make one orbit around earth. So friends, when the object's orbital period is equal to the rotational period, orbital period is equal to the rotational period, and in the moon case it is 28 days, and because of that what happens, you see only one side of the moon always. This is because of tidal locking. Tidal locking is very important word. Then second important aspect is you always see one side of the moon and you cannot see far side of the moon. And this Chang'e 4 mission of China that landed the spacecraft on the far side of the moon, that is the important point, right? And because of this Chang'e 4 mission of China, 2-3 important aspects don't forget. The far side of the moon, that is the other side of the moon, is protected from radio transmissions from the earth. That means it is free from radio disturbances from earth. So therefore friends, it is the best location for radio astronomy. Second important aspect is moon has abundance of helium-3, and in future it can serve as ideal fuel for space explorations. So therefore in future this can start from moon. Right, so these two are the important aspects. This is more than enough. And in this news article, Chang'e 4 mission, then how the communication is taking place, that is through Queqiao, and that far side of the moon, What do you understand by it in this context? Tidal locking is important word. What is the meaning of tidal locking? And at the same time, one should say that it is the best site for radio astronomy because of lack of disturbances, or you can say it is shielded from radio disturbances from Earth. These are the important points when one looks at Chang formation. Equally important article. This is about InSight. InSight is of NASA and name itself talks about full form of InSight. It clearly talks about what is its role, what it is going to do. Normally, when we are talking about Mars, please don't forget, InSight is the mission that landed on Mars. That means it is the spacecraft of NASA that landed on Mars. Normally, when people are talking about Mars, people talk about whether life existed there or not. But this is something different. This is something different to look at seismic investigations. The name of InSight itself says Mars quakes, just like earthquakes. Quakes are there or not on the Mars. Second one is geodesy. Geodesy means geometric shape, then orientation in the space, gravitational field, and this heat transport, right? So what is the core of Mars, whether Mars quakes are there or not. So all these features will be looked at when one looks at this InSight spacecraft on Mars, right? Students should have clarity about why InSight is launched, what it is going to do. All these things are important. And another important aspect is NASA is the only space agency to have pulled off a Mars landing, right? More recently in 2012, when the Curiosity rover was landed on the surface, and this may not be that important, but what is important is InSight, what exactly it is going to do. Have a glance at it. Here this slide talks about InSight is to look at Mars quakes. Second important aspect is rate at which heat rises through the planet, right? And the other important aspect is here how much Mars wobbles on its axis, and because of that you can identify what is the core of the Mars, right? Mars quakes, heat transfer. Then third one is what is the core, that it will be evident when one looks at wobbling of the Mars on its axis. So friends, InSight is to look into all these aspects, and basically it is for looking at these features, not for looking at whether life exists on Mars or not. This is the important point one should not miss. Next one is most important. This is about Ultima Thule, New Horizons spacecraft of NASA. NASA's New Horizons spacecraft, in fact, that completed the farthest flyby, that is around 6.5 billion kilometers. This is the farthest flyby in the space history, please don't forget. And this Ultima Thule is now became the most distant object, very, very important, most distant object humans have ever explored. And friends, please don't forget, this Ultima Thule is in the Kuiper belt. Kuiper belt is the belt where the dwarf planet Pluto is there, and this is the belt beyond Neptune. So this is all Kuiper belt, and this object is in the Kuiper belt. And for scientific observations, here when some spacecraft is going nearer to particular object, that is known as flyby. Flyby is one important word. Flyby means when a spacecraft is going nearer to some object, basically to observe it, that is known as flyby. And in the space history, this is the farthest flyby. That means now 6.5 billion kilometers away, this Ultima Thule, this particular object in the Kuiper belt, this is being investigated through a flyby by the New Horizons spacecraft, and this spacecraft is of NASA, please don't forget. And what is Kuiper belt? Have a glance at it. It is, in a nutshell, this is near the orbit of Neptune and continues beyond Pluto. this Ultima Thule is the object, and there are thousands of icy bodies in this Kuiper belt, and technically speaking this is from about 30 astronomical units away from the sun and 30 to 50 astronomical units. This is the Kuiper belt, and this Ultima Thule, this is one of the object in the Kuiper belt, and these are the objects which are left over from the formation of the solar system, right? And now here look at it, the mission to Ultima Thule came now. This is of NASA, New Horizons spacecraft, and here one important aspect about Ultima Thule from your examination perspective, that is, this is contact binary. Contact binary is the word used when the solar system body comprises two bodies which gravitated towards each other. In this particular case, the two bodies gravitated towards each other, and Ultima Thule is example of contact binary, please don't forget. And this is the longest flyby in the history of space, right? And here have a glance at it. It throws some light on Ultima Thule and the Kuiper belt, right? So it was discovered using the Hubble telescope in 2014 only, right? So the objective of flyby includes studying the geology and morphology of Ultima Thule and studying its nearby environment, right friends? This is about important aspect of Ultima Thule. We discussed three aspects till now, that is a chunk formation of China. Then the second one which we discussed is InSight on Mars. Third one is Ultima Thule, and few seconds let us spend on this quantum satellite. Though it is old, more than 2 years, but it may be important. First quantum satellite was launched by China. How is it different from normal satellite? Normal satellite, the transmission is through radio waves, but in this particular quantum satellite, here the information is transmitted by delicate photons of infrared light. This is the important aspect. So therefore, here the bits of information is received, or you can say bits of information is encoded in delicate photons of infrared light, right? This is about quantum satellite. And by the by, one should have clarity differentiation between classical computing and quantum computing. At present, the computers are based on this classical computing. Classical computing takes bits, or you can say it is based on bits, either 0 or 1, or you can say on or off. It cannot simultaneously take 0 and 1. And when you look at the quantum computing, it can simultaneously take 0 and 1. That is the difference between classical computing and quantum computing. So therefore, as it simultaneously takes 0 and 1, here the important aspect is its computing power increases. In the previous case, it is only 0 or 1, or you can say on or off mechanism, and here it is the state of 0 and 1 can coexist, and here the unit is bit, here it is qubit, that means quantum bits, please don't forget. So here a qubit can store 0 and 1 simultaneously. This is about quantum computing. So let us leave this discussion here. Let us venture into some important aspect, total polar compounds. And all of you are familiar, continuous frying takes place. If you go to the roadside eateries, they use the same oil number of times. Because of that, what happens? Total polar compounds are formed. What are these total polar compounds? Here what happens? Here the moisture contained in the foods, there is moisture in the foods, atmospheric oxygen, and repeated high temperatures. Because of that, they produce several reactions. These reactions are hydrolysis, oxidation, polymerization. Because of that, what happens? It releases free fatty acids and free radicals. These are released because of moisture, because of atmospheric oxygen, because of repeated high temperatures, and it releases free fatty acids, free radicals, and they in turn form monoglycerides, diglycerides, polymeric triglycerides like that. And all these results in the formation of total polar compounds, right? And now FSSAI said in the oil, total polar compounds should not exceed 25%. Why? Because the toxicity, that means if the total polar compounds exceed 25%, they are in fact dangerous to the health. That's why FSSAI fixed the limit of 25% for total polar compounds. That means beyond which the oil cannot be used, right? And what is the alternative? The alternative is Repurpose Used Cooking Oil program is launched. RUCO program, that is Repurpose Used Cooking Oil. That means once the total polar compounds exceed 25%, you have to throw it out. And the alternative is this RUCO program, Repurpose Used Cooking Oil program or RUCO program. This enables collection and conversion of the used cooking oil into biodiesel. One such experiment was done recently. Dehradun based organization Indian Institute of Petroleum that finished pilot project to convert used cooking oil into bio-aviation turbine fuel. That means as the total polar compounds limit is fixed at 25%, if it exceeds that, now this used cooking oil can be converted into biodiesel, and the program is a RUCO program, please don't forget. So FSSAI launched Repurpose Used Cooking Oil program to collect and convert used cooking oil into biofuel. Right friends, I hope you got clarity about total polar compounds and what is to be done with used cooking oil. It can be converted into this RUCO program into biodiesel, or you can say through RUCO program it can be converted into biodiesel. Right friends, after looking at total polar compounds, at the same time converting used cooking oil into biodiesel, the next important aspect is WHO's Replace campaign. What is Replace? Have you glanced at it? This is the acronym for Review, Promote Legislation, etc. Have you glanced at it? And the main purpose here is to reduce the trans fats, right? Trans fats, they are present naturally and also artificially, right? More and more usage is taking place artificially. Have clarity. Trans fats can be there naturally, can be there artificially. More and more artificial products are being used, and this Replace campaign is the global initiative to eliminate risk factor for cardiovascular diseases or heart diseases. Please don't forget, cardiovascular disease is the leading cause of death globally, right? To save the heart, this Replace campaign will be helpful, and it released a step-by-step guide for the elimination of industrially produced trans fatty acids from the global food supply. That means here reducing to the allowable level of less than 2% in fats, oils and all food. That means Replace campaign aims at by the year 2023, here the trans fats should be reduced to less than 2% in fats, oils and all food. That is the important aspect. And before understanding what is trans fat, please don't forget, trans fats, they occur naturally, at the same time they are artificially produced. Now the world is mainly concerned about reducing the artificially produced trans fats because they are being used more and more in recent times. And to understand that, students should have clarity about what is a saturated fat, what is unsaturated fat, what is a trans fat. And here saturated fats are found in animal products, if you look at the chicken, if you look at the beef, if you look at the pork, they are having saturated fats. Here one important trait is foods that contain more saturated fat, they are solid at the room temperature. That is one indication. And saturated fats were felt dangerous, and some time back, to replace saturated fat, trans fats were promoted. And trans fats, these are made from vegetable oils through the process called hydrogenated, or you can say they are called partially hydrogenated oils. Please listen carefully. This is saturated fats. Some time back, around 50-60 years ago, it was thought they are dangerous, and to reduce their usage, these trans fats are promoted. Trans fats mostly are artificially produced through the process called hydrogenation. That means they are manufactured from vegetable oil through the process called hydrogenation, or you can say they are called partially hydrogenated oils, right? These are artificially produced trans fats, and now it is felt these are dangerous for health. That's why Replace campaign is trying to reduce the trans fats to less than 2% in oils, food and fats. This is Replace campaign by 2023. And what is good for health? Good for health is this unsaturated fats, and they come from plant sources mainly, olives, nuts, seeds, and it is also present in fish, please don't forget. So these are unsaturated fats which are good for health. So having learnt about saturated fats, unsaturated fats and trans fats, now the Replace campaign is reducing trans fats to less than 2%, right? So here WHO recommends people should consume less than 1% of their energy from trans fats, and the problem with the trans fats is they raise bad cholesterol or LDL cholesterol, and they reduce good cholesterol or HDL cholesterol. And look into the products which are high in trans fats, like French fries, like cheeseburger, like donuts, like Vanaspati ghee. These are rich in trans fats, right? And now let us look at FSSAI campaign. It launched a mass media campaign for the elimination of industrially produced trans fats in the food supply. That means it aims to eliminate trans fats by the year 2022. We have seen Replace campaign is to eliminate by 2023 or to reduce it to less than 2% by 2023, and now FSSAI, which is the food regulator, it wants to eliminate by 2022, right? And these are largely present in Vanaspati, margarine, and can be found in baked and fried foods, right? So you have to reduce the intake of baked foods, fried foods, and one component, please don't forget, margarine, very important. It may be important from your examination perspective also. Margarine is the product which is rich in the trans fats, right? And FSSAI is committed to reduce the industrially produced trans fatty acids to less than 2% by the year 2022 in a phased manner, right? So this is in line with the objective to get freedom from trans fat India at 75, right? And Replace strategy by 2023 and this strategy by 2022. And please don't forget, from your examination perspective, 3-4 important points I would like to tell you. Trans fats, these can come naturally from the dairy products and meat. So when you look at the trans fats, I have already told you they were introduced some time back, that means around 50-60 years ago, to reduce the usage of saturated fats, and now it is felt trans fats are also dangerous, and because of that trans fats are going to be reduced. And here natural sources, that means trans fats can come in two ways. One is natural sources, these are the dairy products and meat of cows and sheep, this is natural. But We are more worried about industrially produced sources. These are known as partially hydrogenated oils, and these were introduced into the food supply in the early 20th century as a replacement for butter, and in 1950s, 1970s they were promoted in a big way because at that time it was felt there were negative health impacts of the saturated fatty acids, right? And please don't forget, partially hydrogenated oils, these are nothing but trans fats, and these are primarily used for deep frying and as an ingredient in baked foods. Please don't forget. And how these trans fats are artificially produced, that is also very important from your examination perspective here, through the hydrogenation process. That's why these are called partially hydrogenated oils. That means here hydrogenation is the process in which liquid vegetable oil, that is converted into solid fat, right? So partially hydrogenated acids, they contain trans fatty acids or trans fats, right? And they are thought to be more harmful than saturated fats. Right? And have a glance at it. Why they are used, why they are promoted. Here trans fats are easy to use and they are less expensive. Please don't forget, hydrogenation is the process, and here the vegetable oil is converted into this solid fat, and they are inexpensive, or you can say cheaper to produce, and they last long time. And the second most important aspect is, because of trans fats you get some sort of desirable taste and texture. This is the most important aspect, and many restaurants and fast food outlets, they use trans fats to deep fry foods because they can be used number of times in the deep fryers, commercial fryers, right? There are several advantages of trans fats, and one important aspect here is they give food a desirable taste and texture, inexpensive. They can be stored for a longer time. They can be used number of times for frying. And this is one important aspect. Artificially produced trans fats are nothing but they are manufactured by chemical process, hydrogenation, which turns liquid vegetable oil into solid fat. Please don't forget. Right, friends, this concludes science and technology related discussion. We will continue this discussion in the 11th module also. Have a nice day. Thank you.